So, welcome to session Creating Value Through Social Innovation and Social Entrepreneurship. I'm really privileged to introduce this topic, uh, and the persons, people who are presenting this subject to you. So, the concept of innovation and entrepreneurship is a age-old concept for social well-being, socio and economic well-being. But the current ecosystem of world and country has given new impetus to it. There is no dearth of literature on entrepreneurship, but the concept that emerged from the soil, particularly in the Indian context, that defines so well in a very simple way is hardly available. But the presentation in this session going to be present before you by Ms. Lakshmi Raman, Ms. Lalita Iyer, and the subject is going to fill this gap. And you will enjoy really a concept which is really grown and emerged from the soil of this country. The today's presentation is based on experience of an NGO called Plus Trust, working on a model of increasing women's agency through entrepreneurial mindset development. It includes this entire model includes micro incubation, rural women change makers, 3P strength model. That is definitely going to be a very new thing for most of us. Entrepreneur motivation profile and fellowship. So prior to going to schedule plan of the subject, I would like to introduce the speakers, Ms. Lakshmi Raman, a professional member of ISAPS and consultant to social sector, and Dr. Lalita Iyer, professional member from Dean Professional Excellence, ISAPS, and founder and managing trustee of Plus Trust. Ms. Lakshmi Raman has 2 decades of experience with Bank of America, Bank of India, following which she moved to social sector, working for 28 years in staff, consulting and advisory capacity. As a consultant, he has undertaken evaluation, impact studies, MIS audit, and documentation for international, European, and Indian donors, local NGOs, and state agencies. She was an independent director on the board of Indian Grameen Services and as an expert in micro credit and community development professional. He has been an advisor to Plus Trust on strategy and capacity building and understand the Plus Trust model intimately. Her core competence lies in monitoring and evaluation processes, process documentation, scoping and impact studies, including gender and impact assessment. She is deeply concerned with issues of equity and inclusion, having interacted with various marginalized groups, including Dalits, Adivasis, transgender, women, persons with special abilities, faith-based minorities, children in distress, rural and urban poor. Lakshmi is a professional member of the Indian Society for Applied Behavioral Sciences with over 25 years experience in personal growth, training and process facilitation. So I welcome Ms. Lakshmi and I request you to be there to give us. Now, I will introduce Dr. Lalita Iyer, who is also one of our key professional members of ISAF, who holds various roles in different occasions, in different span of time. She is a economist by training and was a banker with the State Bank of India for 2 decades before changing career hats to head the prestigious Vidyarayan School in Hyderabad, and she was there from 98 to 2001. She was a consultant with ThinkSoft Consultants, Hyderabad, from 2001 to 2009, advising on state government projects. He is a founder trustee of Plus Trust, an NGO established in 2010 to encourage micro incubation in rural India, particularly among women. He was formerly an independent director of Bharatiya Samriddhi Financial Services of the Basics Group headquarters at Hyderabad. He is currently the board member of Sathi, Bangalore, as well as well-known children rights NGO. She authored, Dr. Lalita authored 2 books, namely Strategic Business Spiral, and that was published by SAYS in 2001, whose sustainability counts basics, long march from microfinance to livelihood, and also he co-authored with Malcolm and Jane Roser and co-edited 3 books along with them. Lalita is a professional member and also a former dean, professional excellence of the Indian Society for Applied Behavioral Sciences. She is actively engaged in applying behavioral science approaches to organization development in general and social sector in particular. With this introduction, I will give you a brief how the things will flow. The first part of the presentation would be like the first part will be presented by Lakshmi Ramanan about the issue and context of the subject matter. Second part will be the Plus Trust story and process. As I told you before, that you are going to listen the real entrepreneurship model culminated, evolved, and understood in the soil, in the Indian soil. And that model, I think, let they talk instead of me talking. But I'm sure that you will enjoy and you will really find a lot of meaning in that. And third part of the presentation will be EMPI, that is Entrepreneurial Motivation Profiling Index. That is an instrument that is used for assessing the people's mindset about the entrepreneurship. And fourth part will be a discussion on the presentation, and few question and answer we will take if the time permits. And now, not taking your much time, I invite Ms. Lakshmi Ramanan to please take the dais and present the concept before the group.
Thank you. Is Jay there?
Pardon? Lakshmi.
Lalita
Lakshmi, I think you are supposed to speak.
First yeah, Jay is here, but I don't see him sitting there.
Okay, the screen.
Yeah, I'm sharing the screen, Lakshmi.
I'm here very much.
Yeah.
Welcome, everybody. We actually thought that with all the technical glitches and the difficulties people have finding out the link, the passcode, logging in, that it would take much longer. But thank you very much for your presence. This paper is something that Dr. Lalita Iyer and I worked on, thinking that it's such a unique experiment that we need to share it with other people. This is not blowing our own trumpet. This is actually looking at an alternative model of women's enterprises. Typically, women's enterprises have been about, okay, self-help groups form something, then you sell some product or you do something. But this is related to a service and actually a knowledge model that Plus Trust embarked upon. Yes. Yeah. What is the issue? The issue is that women do not have the same kind of access and power and the status to access resources for enterprise, to launch on enterprises. Equality between men and women exists when both of them are able to do it. And women have as much of a right to financial independence and the opportunity to develop their personal ambitions and so to say, flex their muscles, because women are also an equal part of society. You know, the one thing I like very much, what Chairman Mao said is that women hold up half the sky. I do not like many of the other things, but I found this very meaningful, that we hold up half the sky and therefore we have a right to half the earth also. Yes. There are gender gaps in India, and they are not small, they are huge. Enterprise ownership by women is just 20%. These are empirical figures. They may vary from place to place. In the Northeast, women are more involved in enterprise, but across much of the rest of India, women's participation is very low. It's about 30% in rural areas. Literacy rate, there is a very big gap, and it's far more than whatever is given in the gap is far more than what is given in statistics. Yes. In the startup space, some studies that were done, 2018, 2019, all the unicorns were urban. And some of the data from Bangalore shows that the startups were mainly IT based. And there is very little support available in rural areas. Yes. Globally, India is the third largest startup hub, but only 9% are women-led startups. Of the 57 countries surveyed for the Index of Women Entrepreneurs, India came a very, very dismal 52. And the number of women involved in entrepreneurship is only 2.6% of the population. Women do enter entrepreneurship very often out of desperation, very small enterprises, micro enterprises, out of desperation, either because of loss of livelihoods, occasion, and before COVID, it was other reasons. And most of it is necessity driven. It's not innovation driven. This graph shows you, this infographic shows you where female entrepreneurs are most common and least common. This is based on a study of somebody's talking there. This is based on a study of 43 countries and territories, and India comes pretty low in that at 2.6%. Yeah.
Please carry on, Lakshmi.
Yeah, you go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Why is this such an urgent issue, and why is it big? As I said earlier, a lot of livelihood promotion for women, proposed for women either by the government or others, have all been based on the SHG model. So they say women, you are in a group and then together you run a brick kiln, a resin factory, a soap factory, or some things like that. No one ever tells men, you get into a group and now you do this enterprise together and it will be successful. Everyone assumes that men can start up enterprise on their own. The difficulties of SHG-based livelihood promotion is that women perceive, particularly rural women, perceive their primary role as the domestic role. And therefore, much of the focus, so plans are made without taking into account this choice, which is cultural and community-based, family-based. SHG-based promotion also limits the choice to home-based kind of work. And the work is mostly for external markets. So we have instances of Hindustan Lever coming in and telling SHGs, now you sell tea to all rural areas, and then we'll give you a commission on it. The benefit of it doesn't really come to that area. It goes to the company. Services within local communities, they are missed out in this time frame. Very, very basic level services, which could be related to hygiene and sanitation. Big chunk of it is education, last mile education. And therefore, it excludes women entrepreneurs who aspire to address local needs. As you know that, I think you know that basic services in communities are not adequate. Despite the gaps in the government system, there are very few other alternatives. And there is this very huge need for the local. We are calling it the last inch, not the last mile. The last inch adaptive situation to meet the needs of communities. And these issues have become far more intense after COVID, when people, particularly men in large numbers, have lost livelihoods. And therefore, women who earlier used to support and share in bringing income to the family, now a lot of the burden has fallen on them. Yeah. Yes, Lali? You'd go to the next slide.
Sorry, it's not moving. I don't know what the problem is.
What about Jay? Is Jay there? Do it manually now with the arrow.
Yeah. Oops.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
You have covered the slide more or less. The significance of the issue.
Significance of it. Yeah. The startup ecosystem promotes a survival of the fittest. Now, what are called intersectional concerns, which is concerns related to women based not only on the fact that they are female, but also because of caste, of ethnicity, of digital literacy or disability. All these are also ignored when in the startup ecosystem. And rural women's entrepreneurial aspirations are yet to be acknowledged. Just because a woman has just completed school or just completed higher secondary school does not mean that she does not want to be, to go up, to do something meaningful, to contribute to the community, to society. And NGO programs have been good, but their focus has been largely on financial security and control over resources, but not much on how to deploy resources profitably. I remember going to a project in Andhra Pradesh some 15 years ago, and the self-help group had 25 lakhs because the state had given groups, but they just sat with the 25 lakhs because the NGO also didn't have ideas, and the women didn't have ideas how they could deploy it. So an approach which builds the agency, agency means the power to decide for yourself, and the capacity of women through experience is really needed. Yeah. Now I will hand over to my colleague Lalita to go a little more in depth into what it means to start small. And please remember, organizations like SEBA, Lijat Papad, so many others started, Annapurna Mandal, they started really small. So please wait for Lalita to tell you, share with you.
Thank you very much, Lakshmi, and thank you, SM, for the lovely introduction.
Lalita, one moment. Can you
Yeah.
make it as full screen presentation?
Why don't I have it like this? Because it's,
Okay.
you know, it's getting stuck. So I'm more comfortable with this.
Okay.
Thanks, Jay. It's a great pleasure to see so many friends and well-wishers who have all been with me in various ways in this Plus Trust story. And it's particularly joyful moment for me to present this part of my life in ISABS, which is again a very important part of my life. Just like Plus Trust is important for me, ISABS is equally important. So bringing this story here is indeed a very special moment for me. We started Plus Trust in 2009 informally. As many of you know, it was in memory of my daughter. And there were two people who were with me in this journey as trustees. They continue with me, Shanti Yechuri, and many of you know Shanti as well, and Smriti Kedia, who is based in Udaipur. And for the first 5 years, we were doing fellowships mostly with urban, more educated, middle class, maybe lower middle class youths. And initially we were doing equal numbers of men and women, but we soon found that there were more men coming up for these opportunities. And there were hardly any women and nobody from the rural area. Simultaneously, we also found that there were more fellowships coming up. There were more people opening up for fellowships. And we said, okay, the space is crowded and this is not the community we want to serve. 3 women trustees sitting and saying, you know, our gender ratio is tilting. So that's when we said that we will do rural and we will do women. And that was around 2015. From 2016 onwards, we've been concentrating on what we announced as the Rural Women Edupreneurs, RWE program, because our fellowships were focused on inclusive education and animal welfare. Animal welfare has always been and also ran, not too many people have joined, but for the edupreneurship fellowships, we've always had good demand. When we started in 2016, we didn't know how many people would even want to do this, because it's not a job, it doesn't guarantee anything, and it doesn't tell you what to do. Surprisingly, we've been able to reach around 70-75 women in the last 5 years, and they have all joyfully embraced the opportunity, and they have done very special things for the children and for their immediate community. Many of them have worked on issues other than education as well. And our whole effort has been to remain small and remain flexible so that we can work closely with whoever wants to do something which is a little offbeat, which is a little out of the way in her neighborhood. We've been able to spread mainly because some of our former fellows have showed up to say that they would like to extend their support to us as we spread near their workspace. So we have a network of 10 anchors who are now trained, and they have been able to replicate our model effectively within their periphery. And to take forward our approach, we have now set up what we call addas, which are really hubs, where we want to intensify our presence and demonstrate to the community that this works. So for like Lakshmi said, we call it the last inch linkage, the Plus Trust Fellowship. It bridges a local gap. The focus is on social purpose, and it improves quality of basic services. It is specific and short term. The applicant knows that it is going to be for 6 months, and it empowers through experiments. It doesn't tell anybody what to do. It walks with them as they try. So the role of the anchor is very critical here, because the anchor is the person who's close to the woman who's trying to do something. And every step of the way, the anchor is there to, nudge her to see the situation in a slightly different way. Our key audience is change makers, especially women. We don't call them entrepreneurs because they're not into enterprise because they want to make a livelihood or they want to make a profit. They are here because they are interested in their communities and well-being in their communities. And our fellowships are differentiated according to the need of the person who's seeking the fellowship. So at the moment, we have 3 types of fellowships. We may have more depending on the themes that emerge. But the core process is the same. So the woman is first invited to a workshop where she is helped to identify her core purpose and planning and implementing an activity. She defines the group with whom she is going to work and how she is going to mobilize local support. And we support her through mentoring, a small amount of money. In fact, our fellowship amount is not fixed. We ask the woman to choose how much she needs because 6 months later that money will not be there for. So women choose very wisely and very frugally. We were surprised that urban youth wanted 25-30,000 as fellowship in 2015-16. And when we stepped to 2016 to rural women, there was one girl who came up with a request for some 5,256 or something like that. She had calculated bus fare for the number of days that she will have to travel to schools. That is the kind of calculation that she did and came up with her fellowship amount. So we had to round it off to 6,000 for our convenience. And most importantly, we have identified what it is that women gain through this process by talking to them. And we've identified 3 dimensions. One is building the self-confidence of the person and developing their entrepreneurial skills, clarifying their idea, helping them test it in the field, and building local support and enthusiasm for their idea, and also helping them to develop a path for their professional progress. Whoever it is, she decides what will help her take the next step in her own journey as a professional. So this is usually the Plus Trust story. So the core aspects are, it's a short duration thing, close rapport and mentoring. It is light touch. There is no pressure on anybody to choose what she wants to do. And they have the freedom to modify and go with what works. It is right from the beginning oriented to enterprise and no grants. And peer support and networking is very much emphasized. And we clearly say that this amount is to meet your personal need. It's not for your project work. Very often the project work is actually physical or emotional labor. And this money helps her take care of her personal needs. And in the interest of time, I will not show the film, but if you go to YouTube and key in Plus Trust, you will get several short films about how our fellows talk about the fellowship program. So I'll skip the film. And this is what we call our 3P strengths model. It's or for short 3PS model or 3Ps model. And this model we derived or we built by debriefing after the fellowship. We talk with the women who complete the fellowship and ask them what happened during that period. Where were they and what are the changes they noticed? And when we collected this data over a few 3 batches, then this picture emerged that the women see themselves gaining first in the personal front and then in the project management and project capability. And third is viewing themselves as professionals and planning actively for their professional progress. So in personal strengths, we have confidence, willingness to learn, and then the actual experience of doing something on their own, participation in groups, access to networks, and because many of them work in education, an interest or an enthusiasm for interactive and activity-based methods of teaching and learning. That is a bias towards experiential learning. And the project strengths that get developed in the process is about they first clarify whom they're working for, they define their client, and they look at their ideas for change, and they're able to convert it into a set of activities for a 6-month period. So this gives them a pathway, a chart to test out an idea and a vision for change. Along the way, we always emphasize that when they start an activity, they should be able to generate some money from it, at least at the end of 6 months. And believe me, this invariably happens because the community itself sees the worth of what this woman is doing, and they're able to compensate her for her time and effort. So using this 3P model, we have tried to track their progress. Every year, every batch, we assess how they have been doing. As you can see, the base, the pink color of the combined bar is the personal strength, and then the darker color is their project management strength, and the lighter orange is their, this part is their professional strength. So we have, this is the personal strength, this is the project strength, and this is the professional strength. So we've mapped the 55 women for whom we have the data. We had the data at that time. Right now there is a batch going on and we're still doing the data. So we mapped it like this, and this gives us courage that we are on the right track. Whatever it is, there is some learning that the woman takes back with her, and it all adds up. Like when this is high, then this and this also seem to be high. And this approach of measurement, where we measure the situation when they start the fellowship and then when they end the fellowship, and it is the difference that we count, because there is much diversity with which our women come in. They're diverse in terms of age, experience, qualification. So we can't judge them all using the same scale. So our scale uses the difference, not the absolute growth. I'll skip this. I think, yeah, I've more or less covered all this, that there is a pre-selection phase, there is a selection process, then there's the fellowship, then the alumni engagement, then there is anchor development, Plus Trust Addas have come up. This is how Plus Trust has grown over the years. Should I pause here for 5 minutes? I don't have any feel of what the audience is experiencing. Maybe 2 or 3 voices to say how you're experiencing this before I go into the next part, which is comparison with EMPI. You can raise a hand and we'll know if there is a raised hand. Jay can take a look and no? Suramani is saying, please go on.
Yeah.
Suryamani, I can't hear you.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
Lalita, the presentation so far I have seen is very encouraging, at least for me as a professional, particularly from the entrepreneurial development point of view. And now at least I get a sense that how this entrepreneurship can be translated in various other fields, like, edupreneurship, and this kind of the model you have shared. And I really liked it, because I think that is the first step to encourage people to become entrepreneurs. That is where I see the value in this presentation.
Thank you.
And particularly, though I was reserving that my comment for at the end of the session, but let me speak here. This 3P model you have presented here is a very, very promising model. Most of the entrepreneurs, they really miss that comprehensive view, what they need to become effective or a successful entrepreneur. So this one has to really learn what are the personal strengths one is having, and need to build further as a person. Person has to learn before venturing into the enterprise and entrepreneurship, about, the professional strength he or she needs to manage the entire, enterprise. And of course, the project strength you have given. This is superb. Something most of the enterprises are startup get failed because the goal clarity is missing there. So I think this is something I see nowhere such kind of thing has been presented so far in my knowledge. So that is where I am.
Oh, thank you. And Professor TV Rao says, can you give an example? There are lots of examples, and this is my favorite trap. I go into poetry about the stories of the women whom we have had the privilege to work with. So many of them start with such a simple idea and they make a difference immediately in their community. TV sir, I will share detailed stories with you, profiles and case studies with you offline. And anybody can please go to our website or to our YouTube channel and see visuals of 2-minute videos of some of our entrepreneurs. And Vidya, thank you for your kind words. This was Suruchi also, somebody else. Sunita presentation, okay. Yeah, thank you all. So now I feel little encouraged to go on to the next piece, which I think is very important because we're talking about it in an ABS conference. So while I was, developing the 3P model and wondering whether it is right, whether it is wrong, because nobody else is talking in these lines, Sharad, who is a professional member, offered a workshop or a seminar, I don't know what to call it, an online session on a model in which he is trained and which a profile which he is accredited to administer, which is called the entrepreneurial mindset profile. There is a model and an inventory. This was developed by Davis, Hall and Mayo in the Leadership Development Institute of the Eckerd College of the Florida University. And like many of the models which are in use in CCL and all that, it is based on empirical study, and it identifies what are the key qualities of a person with an entrepreneurial mindset. So the person can be an employee, can be a manager, can be anywhere, can be a professor, but does the person have an entrepreneurial mindset, or less entrepreneurial than somebody else? So they came up with 2 dimensions. One they called personality scales, which is at the entry level, a person is supposed to have these things. These are basic. The person, an adult who has these qualities, is into an entrepreneurial mode of thinking and behaving. So these personality scales, they identified as independence, preference for limited structure. We know that ISABians are, entrepreneurially oriented, at least on this, that we don't like structures. Non-conformity, risk acceptance, action orientation, passion and need to achieve. So we look at our Plustrust selection process. 3 stages in our selection process take care of this. Some of the dimensions are taken care of in the application scrutiny. Then the rest are assessed during the workshop. And after the workshop, they develop the pilot project proposal. If a workshop has 25 people, we may still end up with 10 or 12 proposals. All 25 may not apply, even though they have been oriented. Or all the proposals that come, we may not be able to select all of them. So that developing the proposal is the next filter. So with these 3 filters, our model, our 3P model, more or less takes care of the personality scales. And then if we go further into our 3P dimensions that I talked about, the EMPI model has what they call skill scales. The skill scales, their model says, is what can be developed. If someone comes in with a fairly good score on the personality scales, then working on the skill scales will make him or her very entrepreneurially oriented. So if you look at the skill scales, there are 2 scales which almost map our personal dimension in the 3 Ps. self-confidence and interpersonal sensitivity, they've said. So in our model, self-confidence, we've said, and willingness to learn, openness to experience and accessing networks. And then interpersonal sensitivity is participation in groups, willingness to engage and interest in interactive methods. So if you see, there is a close congruence between this approach and ours. Similarly, when we look at the project dimension, the skill scales talk about the future focus, idea generation, optimism, and execution. And the entire cycle of thinking of their project and executing it addresses these 4 dimensions in our understanding. Because there is a vision for change, what are their ideas to bring about the change, identifying the target group, defining the need correctly, then also planning for financial sustainability. All this is built into the project dimension of the 3P model. And the third one is what we call the professional dimension, where they call the EMPI scale calls it persistence. If the woman who gets our fellowship wants to continue in our line for a long time, she also has to build her skills, have goals about her professional development, and continue and work on those goals. So this is a very important aspect of our work. And very often, even after the fellowship is over, women approach us saying, I'm enrolling for this course, please fund us. There again, we don't tailor make the courses for them. They select the course and they tell us which course they want. Or if they want something, they say that this is my need, can you suggest where I should go? So this part also gets built into the model. So this way we found, to our joy, that there is a well-researched, empirically sound model which is echoing our approach. And this brings us to the questions we have for this community. We have about 8 minutes. I don't know if we should get into breakout rooms, but the questions are these. So it'll be great if we just have a discussion. And those of you who have any suggestions to strengthen our work further, any reflections on how gender and patriarchy impact entrepreneurship, especially in rural India, and then what is the other ABS research available that can improve our support for this micro incubation of micro social ventures. These 3 things can be very important for us. What I'm doing is I'm going to copy these questions and put it in the chat box and close the presentation so that I can see all of you. Otherwise, what happens is I get only this screen share view. So I don't even know who's thinking what. So I will stop share. Yeah. I hope you can see the questions that we have created in the chat box. And Suryamani, I think it's over to you to moderate the discussion. Suryamani, are you there? Because I can't see. Anyway, I can also see who's raising a hand, who has a comment. Anybody can. Lovely to see so many friends.
Oh.
Oh, there is a chat box.
Jay, they cannot unmute.
So can you type in your questions in the chat box?
Yeah, once they raise their hand, we can unmute them, Lalita and.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for this suggestion. Self-definition of women. Certainly, we spend a lot of time on that in our workshop. I will look up the references, Professor Rao. Abigail Stewart. Yes, thank you. Uma?
Uma, you're muted.
Yeah, so I'm trying
Can
to
you
check.
unmute Uma, please?
Yeah. Hold on. Uma, you can unmute yourself now. Yeah.
Thanks, Uma.
Uma, you unmute, please.
Okay.
You can unmute now.
Yes.
It happened. So I came late, Lalita, so I'm not sure whether this point is already covered. In that case, you can just ignore it. I was thinking that social change to take place, it's not one party. So whether it is rural women or urban women, if women have to become entrepreneurs and take their power in their own hands, men also need to work on themselves. And they need to begin to rejoice in this leveling, social leveling, and the woman bringing out her best. They have not learned that, large part of them. So that's so it can lead to a lot of domestic issues and family issues when men have not changed and the woman changes by herself. So this is the part I wanted to highlight. Maybe you have already covered it. But I wasn't there. So.
I didn't specifically cover it in my presentation, but this is the realization which hit us, you know, that it is the personal part of the journey which is so important. So if you look at our model, there's a heavy focus in the fellowship period on their personal development, you know. And for many of the women who come, it's the first time somebody is asking them, what did you do in life? What do you want to do in life?
No,
so even a simple activity like the river of life is transforming for them.
I'm talking about men's development.
Yeah. Men's development, we have not directly worked with men. We have been working with women. And we hope that eventually through our hubs, we will be able to influence the, that is why we've gone into the hub model, that entire ecosystem has to change, you know. That what happens is individual stories, we know that once a girl stands her ground, within 3 months, the men in the village begin to see her differently. The men in her family see her and receive her differently. That change we are noticing from the individual stories. And we hope to systematically harvest that when we have our hubs in place. And by the time we came up with the hub strategy, the COVID struck. So our hubs are still virtual, you know. So I'm waiting for the time when the hubs can become really something like, we call them addas. So it can really become a social place where men and women can come and, you know, engage and interact. So I'm waiting for that. Thank you. It's a very important point, Uma, and we want to work on that.
I want to add that because a lot of the support is to women based at home, it doesn't directly threaten their menfolk. They're not asked to leave and go to some other place and start something. So the threat level is very low. And then it's related to education of children. A lot of the fellowships are given to women who are teaching, who are giving supplementary tuition, or they are teaching adult literacy programs. And those are generally valued even in rural areas. Education is valued. Teaching in government schools is so poor that any supplementary help for a child to, you know, do its homework, help with learning the lessons, understanding is so much value. Most of these are also first generation literates, most of the children. And when community leaders see that, and it's not happened across the border, community leaders see that there is less resistance. they do help to say, okay, you can use the community hall, or you can use this space in the panchayat. And so it's very slow, but it's happening.
So I see another comment, which
Karthik.
is, Karthik's comment.
Karthik is there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also wanted to talk to the second question. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to the second question about gender and patriarchy and how they influence entrepreneurship. And a bit of what I wanted to say has already been covered by Uma.
Hello.
So I'll add by sharing the example from the movie Sui Dhaga. And that's perhaps what she was saying, the Hindi movie Sui
Password is all
Dhaga.
I said.
Had
Capital.
when the
Somebody has to mute themselves.
Sushma has to move.
Okay.
Sushma, please
All
mute.
the best.
Yeah. Karthik, please continue.
So I'll just add and quickly say that two movies came to my mind to kind of build on the conversation we are having. So if we look at the Hindi movie Sui Dhaga, in that the family circumstances make the woman free to go out and search for employment. So that's one factor. The other is the husband's support and the mother-in-law's support. Also, so you know what Uma was saying, that the men also change and rejoice in the woman's success. So that allows her to unleash the entrepreneurial self. And I was also thinking of the movie Kape Ranasingam, which is a Tamil movie, in which, you know what Professor Rao was saying, the definition of the woman's sense of who she is. So in the face of adversity, how she becomes, you know, so powerful and fights the village, the community, the system, in vain in the end, but still she rises to the occasion and finds many of the entrepreneurial qualities, especially the confidence is what we see.
Thank you, Karthik. Joy, you wanted to say something. Should I unmute you or you unmuted?
I am unmuted, I think.
Yeah.
No, I'm also talking in line with what Uma was raising. I think for generations together now, the whole, at least the development sector has focused on women empowerment, which is a fantastic movement by itself. But what is really left behind is not empowering men to really accept a woman in equal power, or accept her when she becomes who she becomes. I think I had the opportunity to work with one such women group in rural in Tiptur in Karnataka, where there are 20 women entrepreneurs we worked with. Maybe I can share some of my experience with you, since we're going to be focusing on rural women, how it worked and the kind of challenges we went through and they went through to become who they want to become. The other area of women empowerment role, like all this, they take the position of counselors in the BBMP, corporations, but then all the men are the ones who are all the time riding it, and women become the backseat drivers. So
that's the gender stereotyping that happens in organizations.
Yeah.
I think I'm 2 minutes over time. So I don't know how much transition time there is between this session and the next. Maybe we just close here unless somebody has something very important to add. And of course, you all know me, so you can get in touch with me.